Good afternoon, bon après-midi, bienvenue. Welcome to the National Managers Community Learning Event for the Prairies and the Northwest Territories. Managing a virtual team, la gestion d'une équipe virtuelle. Je suis Lisbeth Savard de la CNG de la région des Prairies et des Territoires du Nord-Ouest, NMC, Prairies and Northwest Territory region. Please note that our event today will be recorded and that a YouTube video link will be made available following our session. Before we begin today's session, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory and that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Learning events are just one of the several ways the NMC is working to engage over 40,000 managers and aspiring leaders across the country on topics of importance to you. Leading a virtual team is not something that all managers had experience in doing prior to the pandemic. So during this session, you'll learn how to create safe, trusting, and open relationships amongst your team members, all the while establishing an environment of human connection, problem solving, and team building in a virtual work environment. I'd like to take a moment to introduce Christine Lodge and Daryl Basilirik, the NMC Manitoba Steering Committee co-chairs. It is thanks to their dedication and hard work that we were able to provide you with this regional learning event, one of a series that the NMC has organized across the Prairies and the Northwest Territories. I'm very proud to have the opportunity to have worked closely with them on this project in the region. So a big thank you to Christine and to Transport Canada for facilitating this presentation today. They're really running the show here technology-wise, and I don't think we could have done it without them, so a big thank you for that. So without further delay, I know we're all looking forward to this engaging session. I'd like to pass this over to Christine, who will introduce today's speaker. Over to you, Christine.
Thanks, Lisbeth. Allow me to introduce Bob Ferguson, today's presenter, who will be sharing his experience and expertise on managing virtual teams. After 19 years with Transport Canada and the last 10 as a manager in TTL of the Winnipeg Aircraft Certification Team, Bob now spends a great deal of his time investing in the leadership and team health of various executive and work teams within our department. Bob is a principal instructor for the Transport Canada Leading in a Technical Environment course, which focuses on interpersonal relationship issues and responsibilities. He conducts team building sessions across our country with a diverse cross-section of teams, and most recently has been coaching individuals and teams after receiving a certificate in executive coaching. Bob is currently on assignment with the Change Management Coach with Transport Canada Civil Aviation Branch. Bob, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Christine, for that welcome, and just such a privilege to be here and be able to speak outside the walls of Transport Canada. So a big thank you to the National Managers Community for setting up these sessions and giving a forum for managers in the public service to come together and learn from each other. Also, a big thank you to our behind the scenes team, Tom and Carrie, who are going to try and drive some engagement in this presentation for you. So we've got some toys to play with, and I'm excited to try them out on you. In your invite, you should have seen a mention of menti.com. So we're going to try some engagement with you using that tool. Some of you might have seen that before. We'll give you some instructions shortly on that. And Tom, if I can get you to bring up our slide presentation, I'll maybe get started here. Great. So Christine gave me the opportunity to speak on leading virtual teams. This is a passion area of mine. Actually, leadership in general is a passion area of mine. But I will be the first to admit that being thrown into the situation that we have all found ourselves was kind of jarring for me. Despite all of my reading and learning and teaching and leading my own team, I found this whole 9 months to be kind of jarring. So some of what I'll be sharing today are my own learnings in the virtual environment. Next slide, Tom. So I have on this slide just a little thank you. Managers are usually the last people in the organization to get thanked, and who am I to thank you? But here it is anyway, a freebie to you, a thank you and an acknowledgement that you have been slogging through this without training, without warning. You have been putting in extra effort and sacrifice and improvising and caring about your team. And I know all this to be true of you personally because you came to this session. The leadership course that I teach is voluntary, and I have yet to have a poor student. Those that put up their hands and voluntarily come out to learn are the ones who are already putting in the effort. So thank you for being here. Just a couple of housekeeping words. We're going to clean up the presentation and mail it out to you after today. So don't feel obliged to take notes. We'll send it all out to you. And the other point is that there is a question and answer icon somewhere towards the top right of your screen, a little question bubble. And if you have questions during the session, I'd encourage you to put them into the Q&A area. We will either deal with them directly or we have time at the end of the session for a more formal Q&A session. So what am I going to talk about with regard to virtual leadership? I have learned by teaching my course for a number of years now that I am generally not the smartest person in the room. And I'm going to apply that to today's experience as well. You have years of experience in leading your teams. You have all of the context about your team specifically. So there is really nothing earth-shattering that I can tell you. So what I decided instead to do is review some basics. Look at some of our fundamentals of leadership and how they apply in the virtual environment. And then to encourage you that you are the best leader for your team. So we will go through a little bit of an interactive exercise, and it is designed to encourage you to be the leader of your team. And hopefully we will give you some confidence to do that in the virtual environment. Tom, next slide. So where I want to start with the fundamentals of team leadership in a virtual environment is to go back to the basics. In Transport Canada, I teach a concept called team dynamics. This can also be thought of as team social dynamics. And really, it's a fancy way of saying, within our team, how do we treat each other? So the social dynamics are all about behaviors on the team. And we know that if we can get our teams to be treating each other in healthy, respectful ways, that we will have more productive teams, that we will have more collaborative teams, that we will have more creative teams, and we will have, in general, higher morale. So the fundamentals of leadership, virtual or otherwise, are housed in this idea of, can we simply just get these team members to be treating each other in a way that fosters good teamwork. Next slide. So within our course, we break these team dynamic fundamentals down into 3 elements. It's a framework or a model, if you will, and it is a building block model. In other words, you need the one previous in order to fully realize the next element. And those 3 elements are simply psychological safety, trust, and openness. Psychological safety answers the question, is the team able to interact without offending, disrespecting, or otherwise harming one another? Whether that harm might be intentional or otherwise. Once people feel safe that they won't be harmed, they are ready to enter into trusting relationships with those team members. So moving to trust answers the question, is the team able to confide in, be vulnerable with, and be unguarded with each other? By the way, that is a high bar for trust. So we are not talking about predictive trust, simply knowing that that Jerry will likely be 5 minutes late for work and likely won't have done his task. This isn't the predictive trust of with regard to behaviors that if I disappoint one of my team members, they'll be mad at me. This is actually a trust that's based on a personal relationship with other team members to the point where I feel comfortable to confide in a team member. I feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable with that team member. What's that mean? Well, maybe that would mean, listen, Mark, I think I might need your help on this. I don't know how to do this task. And to be unguarded, meaning I am not feeling that I need to put up a facade with my team members. I don't feel I need to have any kind of shield or armor, that I can be completely unguarded with them, including sharing, for example, parts of my life outside of work. And if we can develop this kind of safety and trust within the team, then we can move into openness. Again, this is a high standard of openness. This isn't just whether our team members feel comfortable turning their cameras on. It's actually, is the team able to work through disagreements unsupervised? Are they able to debate issues and challenge one another in the pursuit of what is best for the team, whether you, the manager, are in attendance or not? That kind of openness you can start to see requires this kind of trust, this vulnerable, unguarded kind of trust, and that trust needs to be sitting on a foundation of safety. So as I said, these team dynamics or fundamentals are true of the virtual and in-office environments. And the natural question that hopefully you've already developed is, great, how? So Tom, I'll get you to advance the slide, and we'll talk about how to develop these fundamental elements of team dynamics. So psychological safety, as I said, is knowing that you, the team member, including you, the team lead, are not in harm's way when you are among your team members. And that harm, again, is being disrespected, being offended, or otherwise mentally harmed. And the quick answer to how to build psychological safety is that you cannot do it alone. As the team manager, you don't have enough information to build a safe environment for your team, because you don't know what you don't know. And the information that you really need is, what does each and every team member on my team uniquely need in order to feel psychologically safe? So that needs to start with a conversation. Normally, it's going to need to start with a private conversation so that you, as the manager, can uncover if there are any situations with regard to safety that you're unaware of. But the goal is not simply to stop there. The goal is actually to have a team conversation about safety. And the goal of that conversation is to agree as a team on a set of behavioral standards that protect everyone. And it's an awkward conversation. In my course, I talk about 4 awkward conversations for managers. And really, the encouragement there is the first conversation will be awkward, so will the second and third, but the fourth one will start to feel normal. So you have to get in and wade into these situations, and it's awkward for all the wrong reasons. In North America, we don't talk about our feelings. In the workplace, we don't talk about our feelings. So this is a conversation about protecting my feelings. So, for example, one member of the team might really need to feel safe. They really need there to be no yelling, which seems like a pretty low bar for the office. But I don't know your context, so maybe that is something that you need to discuss as a team. Somebody else needs to be assured that they're not going to be attacked when no one else is around. That's a common one and has become a real issue with regard to the virtual environment. Regardless of what those conversation content is, it's about having those conversations, coming to those kind of agreements. And then it's just an issue of maintenance. As a manager, if I see somebody stepping outside of the standards that we've all agreed to, I need to call them out. I need to encourage my team members to call each other out on behaviors. But it's a win-win situation. You're creating psychological safety on your team so that you are protected and that you don't inadvertently harm anyone else. And that's true of everyone on the team. Having created psychological safety, which is a journey, by the way, it's not a Friday afternoon event. But after you start to journey into psychological safety, then it's about developing trust. And developing trust is relational, and it really requires people to get to know each other. And back in the day, some organizations, this was all about going out for drinks after work. I've never subscribed to that because it's not required. What's required is for people to know each other in a professional relationship well enough that they can confide in each other. That's the goal. So as the manager, it's on you to design ways to develop relationships with your team members. Not good enough for the relationship simply to be between you and each one of your team members. The goal is actually to create that kind of trust between team members. And that's about spending some time together. As we move into a safe and trusting environment, we then are looking to create openness. Openness is about working together. So whether you assign work to pairs or small groups or as a team as a whole, or any combination thereof, in order for people to be open, they need to be in the same room, virtual room, as each other. And one of the keys that I've developed in my own learning in this is the idea of group problem solving. And I like to tell the anecdote about buying a house. So you go out and buy a house, and your first day in the house, you finally get around to looking in the backyard and you notice that your new fence between you and your new neighbor is ready to fall down. So you have three choices, in my opinion, probably more, but here's three. You could take on building a new fence by yourself, shoulder the costs, and won't that be a show of goodwill to your neighbor? You could go over and knock on the door and say, listen, I'm the new guy, you're the old guy, this is mostly your fence, so please replace it. Or you could go next door, knock on the door and say, listen, I'm your new neighbor, how would you like to share the cost and build a new fence together this weekend? In each one of those solutions, the fence gets rebuilt, but only in the last option do you build the fence with your neighbor, and in doing so, create relationship. So the idea here of working together to create openness is the idea of group problem solving, which actually has the side benefit of building relationship. If I never got a solution that was any better than the one that I could get by assigning work to a single person, I would still assign work to groups because I'm getting the added benefit of team members building relationship with one another. Next slide, Tom. So those are the fundamentals. Let's now then talk about moving into the virtual realm. So what do the virtual team dynamics look like in a virtual environment? So what's new and different? Well, the good news, I suppose, is that these concepts, these three elements, got the name fundamentals because they are foundational, they are fundamental, and they don't change with context. So safe is still safe, it's still needed to build trust. Trust is still trust, and it's still needed to build openness. But that doesn't mean that they're the same in the virtual environment, and I'll maybe just take a moment to share some of my own personal experiences. I got shut in due to a trip to Edmonton very early in March. My wife taunts me because she has a little counter on her phone, and she reminds me that we are at day 310 and counting. So I've been in this virtual environment longer than I want to. And I will have to admit that the first 2 weeks of March were absolutely jarring. We were able to successfully send our team home, and thankfully for us, we had both the technology and the electronic environment to support that. But as the leader, as the manager of that team, I was really thrown off my game. And we have adopted MS Teams very quickly within Transport Canada. So becoming familiar with those tools started to give me a pathway back to the fundamentals. So safe in a virtual environment, it's still about that covenant between team members about how they behave towards one another. But the opportunities as the manager to observe whether those behaviors are being respected became far more difficult. So the check-ins became far more important for me. In general, it's about intentionality. I found as a manager that I had to be very intentional about things that I could normally perform on a pretty ad hoc basis. I couldn't lean over and listen to a conversation that I used to listen to across 3 cubicles. And I couldn't just simply drop in. So I had to become more intentional about checking in and having those overt conversations about whether people are feeling safe, private conversations and as a team. Trust, it became about finding ways to keep people engaged with each other. For us, it ended up being virtual coffee breaks. For you, I don't know your context, so just go back to the fundamentals. It's about designing ways for people to get to know each other and maintain that knowledge. And openness was a little tricky at first, but our team got on to working in pairs and small groups and as an entire team quite quickly. Probably far more about them than me, but the fundamentals stuck. So I'm very interested to engage you on some of this. Christine, just a quick check-in, anything in the Q&A that needs dealing with, or can they wait?
No, Bob, I don't see anything in the Q&A right now, but I think I have one question for myself.
Sure.
When you're creating that psychological safety in that virtual environment, with it being so quick for people to do texting, whether it's MS Teams or whatever media platform that you use in your workplace, it's easy for people to communicate and then say, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." Do you find that that's affecting the virtual environment right now?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that we really need to embrace as managers is email does not convey tone, and neither does texting. And tone is huge for how someone receives a message. So I've always encouraged teams to meet face to face. If it's video chat, I still count that as face to face because I can see if someone's rolling their eyes. I can see if they're shrugging. I can see if they're engaged or not engaged. So absolutely, and those things are huge. I had one blowout with one of my team members that was very unexpected. And in the end, it came down to a misread of the tone of an email that was sent probably a little flippantly, but certainly not with malice attached. So yeah, these issues are very real. So if we can, Tom, next slide. I would love to get some engagement from those on the call. So we have set up in the background this menti.com, and on your smartphone, or if you have a second screen, if you can get yourself to a browser and put in menti.com, follow the link. There should be an area at the top to put in this 6-digit code 190104. So the question I have for you is, which team dynamic element are you finding most challenging in your virtual environment? Is it about creating psychological safety? Is it about creating trust? Or is it about creating openness? And we've put an option in there to answer I don't know, which is an absolutely valid response. So I'll give you a moment to get those going, and Carrie's in the background. As soon as she starts to see answers coming in, we will bring those up on the screen and show them to you live. So, and just to, oh, excellent. Openness, taking early lead. So just to talk a little bit more about these, the safety one, I can't stress enough how foundational that one is to a healthy team. I've got a co-instructor of our Transport Canada course, and he originally took the course and then became an instructor, and in between he went home to really think about the course material, which included the concept of psychological safety, and it was really astounding to both of us that he had long-standing psychological safety issues on his team, and he did not have a huge team. I think he had 12 direct reports. But these issues were going on unbeknownst to him as the manager. So and that's not an indictment in any way. You don't know what you don't know. So the advice on psychological safety is go find out. Go find out in a very respectful way. So openness is just flying out in front. So let's talk about that one. The openness that we talked about was to be able to share information in a very unguarded way. So just going to read back for myself. Is the team able to work through disagreements, debate, challenge one another, and in pursuit of what's in the best interest of the team, even if the manager isn't there? So this really is about collaboration, their ability to collaborate. And a lot of this has to do with you, the manager, with regard to how you distribute work. People can't collaborate if they don't work together. If you are assigning work and collaboration is a problem, I'll go back to the concept that this is a building block model of fundamentals, right? What that means is that if openness is the problem, the element before it, in this case, trust, is likely where the solution lies. So if people are not comfortable to work together, the first place I would go on my team is, do we have an issue of trust? Right? So it's not to say openness is the problem, let's put all of our efforts towards more openness. It's to go back underneath openness and say, have we built the openness on a foundation of trust? So as we move people into these situations of collaboration, let's say we go back to the issue of building a fence together. I don't want to build a fence with somebody I don't know, and especially if we are going to conduct that work without talking to one another, right? So it's to go back a stage and say, have we given opportunity for people to really get to know each other? And if that's an issue, we may first want to go all the way back to safety and make sure they feel safe around each other. If they do, then good. Let's give them opportunity to really get to know one another. By getting to know one another, we know that the person that I am collaborating with has the team's best interest in mind. They have my best interest in mind because they know me, and we have created a basis for a relationship with one another. Christine, anything you can think to add to that conversation?
Yeah, Bob, I was just thinking about openness. If openness is, let's think about all those people maybe that are managers that maybe have large groups, like maybe 20 or more people underneath them. And they're saying in a virtual environment, having a meeting, I can't maybe see all of their faces in a meeting. So how am I going to foster that? Do I break it out into smaller team groups? But now I'm only fostering a smaller team. How do we foster a larger team to create that maybe openness environment?
Yeah, first, if you have 20 direct reports and you're a manager, you have my sympathies. But if that is your reality, I think that there is going to be a necessity to maybe deal with them as smaller groups. So maybe, to your suggestion, break them down, but not hold them, not to create silos, but just to create community, and then to mix up the community. So maybe I've got these groups of 5 working together on these projects, but the next projects I'm going to mix those teams up again, and be able to communicate to the teams. Again, the end goal though is not me to 20, it's 20 to 20. It's really about fostering those relationships below you and releasing them to do work. All right.
Okay, thanks, Bob. We do have one other question that's published, and it says, within my own team, how do I build openness with other colleagues and teams outside of ours?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because what you end up doing is you are cross-cultural. You have your culture, their team has their culture, and we're talking about the cultures in between where we need to interface. The psychological safety, and I'll just quickly wrap this with this comment. I've told my team members to be very aware of what culture they're standing in at what moment, right? Because our team culture might be extremely tight, extremely open, extremely unguarded. But when one of my team members has to work with another team, they need to be cognizant that I'm not at my on my team anymore. I'm standing in between 2 teams. And all of that safety that I had behind me, maybe it's not all there, right? So if 2 teams have to work together all the time, then I would strongly suggest those 2 managers get together and review the fundamentals together. Tom, if you can bring us back into the presentation. Thank you very much for people who jumped on to Menti and participated. We're going to ask you to do that one more time before we're done. And if you can bring up the presentation. Perfect. So if we have the fundamentals underhand, or at least we understand where we want to go with the fundamentals, then the last question that I wanted to deal with today was what should you be doing? And I got to tell you, this was a question that this was the epicenter of the question that really threw me back in March. the idea of being in an extremely foreign environment suddenly, very suddenly, was just, it shook the ground under me a little. And for all of my studying of leadership and all of the time I've put into this, I will be the first to admit that I really came down to this question. Is okay, I got the fundamentals. We're still holding together as a team, but what should I be doing? What next? As the leader, as the manager, and I wandered around looking for an answer for that for a while. And I remember our HR group in the early days came out with a suggestion, and this was the suggestion that rocked me towards my own answer. They said, maybe try an online game with your team. And I didn't know at that time what I should be doing, but I knew what I should not be doing. And that was what I should not be doing, because that was just not authentically me. And it was not authentically my team. So I may not have known in that moment what I should be doing, but I knew what I should not be doing. And then I started to really think about that. Is the authentic me? That's not authentically me. I can't lead that way. Next slide, Tom. And that brought me to my own epiphany, which was, is leading more about who you are, or is it what you do? And helped. I will give props to my coaching education recently, because this was really a concept that they brought out as well. Leading is a lot. Well, leading is you're leading you, right? So it comes from within. So who you are really is the center of that concept of you, the authentic manager. So I could go out there and do some things that were not authentic, and I have no reason to believe that they would be successful. So that got me thinking about not what should I be doing. Maybe it was me. Maybe I was asking the wrong question. Not what should I be doing right now, but who does my team need me to be right now? Next slide. So this is my own epiphany, and if it's of value to you, then I'm thrilled. But for me, it became focusing on being to create my own authentic path to my unique doing. In other words, by looking inward to say, I know my team, I know me. What does my team need me to be right now? And then what does that look like coming out into action? And that was how I got regrounded in this virtual environment. Next slide. So your team may need, yep, Christine?
We just had a question published, and it dealt with the leading there, Bob. And it says, or is leading about who you are leading?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Lots of context. But regardless of who you're leading, because as a leader, you may get shifted to a new team, in which case you're leading other people. What the concept that I want to talk about, though, is this idea of authenticity, that the leader that is within you, that comes out as the manager that you are, needs to be authentic. And the team that you lead, absolutely, it depends on who you're leading, because who you're leading is going to define what they need from you. And what they need from you might look like very different things to your situation versus my situation versus someone else's. So a team might need thoughtfulness from you. They might need flexibility from you. They might need optimism from you, understanding, patience, strong. They might need you to be encouraging or even challenging. Whatever it is that your team needs from you, by focusing on being that, I found that I naturally came to the conclusion of what I needed to be doing in that moment. So I'm cognizant of the time. I just wanted to send you back to Menti one last time, and then we will wrap into a question and answer period. So next slide, Tom. So the question to you, it's back to Menti using the same code 190104. Who do you need to be right now? What adjectives, what characteristic of leadership does your team need from you right now? And again, Carrie will bring up the results as they come in. Do you need to be encouraging? Do you need to be patient? Do you need to be challenging? What does your team need from you right now? And maybe they need more than one thing. There's, I think we gave you at least areas for 3 different things in there. My team needed me to be assuring. They needed assurance, and interestingly, I didn't have a lot to give at the moment, but once I started to really dwell on that word, assurance, the natural, authentic actions started to flow. We don't know where this is taking us, but we know that we're going there together. We started to meet, and we started to have very real conversations that were not work-related at all. But starting those conversations was the assurance they needed that something stable remained on our team. So this is fantastic. Patience is coming out, understanding, kind, informative, creative, clear, love clear, open, myself, awesome, inviting, consistent. So let's just take an example off this word cloud as it's forming and talk about it. So patient. I'm not an entirely patient person, but if the team needs patience from me, I'm going to take that concept inside and say, well, what does authentic patience pointed at my team look like? I have a group of engineers, and so you have a very impatient manager dealing with some very details-oriented engineers. So we have fun sometimes, but patience to me looks like time. So I needed to back off on some of the demands. I needed to maybe be the one that lowered the performance bar for my engineers to say, listen, what took us 2 weeks before we need to give ourselves 3 weeks for. Maybe we need to give ourselves 3 months for. So patience for me to authentically bring patience to my team, that's what it would look like. That's not what patience pointed at your team would look like authentically coming from you. Right? Your context is different, your business rules are different, and more than anything, the people that you're leading are different. So supportive is parked in the middle at this point. So what does supportive look like? So if I bring supportive inside and focus on supportive, supportive to me is going to come out as, and this is an important part of the virtual environment. Supportive is going to come out for me like blocking time. So I'm going to block time, and it might only be 15 minutes, but I'm going to block time for each one of my team members. And I'm going to have an open-ended conversation with each one of my team members about how I can be more supportive, right? Letting them drive the conversation. But for me, that's what supportive would look like. So it's the idea of what do I need to be? Authentically, uniquely you, what does that look like in action? All right, and I'm looking at the time. I think maybe we will leave it there. Tom, if I can bring you back to the presentation. I don't know how helpful this has been to you. I hope it is speaking to someone out there. So again, the idea is to take the thing that you think you need to be right now for your team. And if you don't know what that is, ask your team. They'll tell you. Focus on that thing. Let it ruminate inside and come out as action that is authentically you. So thoughtfulness, for example, I bring that inside. What does that authentically look like in action coming out of me towards my team? Next slide. So here's my final word to you. You've got this. You've had this all along, and you continue to have this. And my email is there. If you need me to send that to you someday in the future, you're welcome to email me. I will tell you again that you've got this. The fact that you showed up here today shows me that you care about your team. And in the end, it's not about being right or doing the right thing as the manager. It's about authentically being present. That's the thing that your team needs most right now, for you just simply to show up. And with that, I would A, thank you for your time, and B, turn it to Christine. We have some time for questions.
Bob, just looking at the one published, it's more of a comment than anything else. Someone wanted to thank you for the great example in your speaking when you were doing the word cloud, and thank you for sharing. We don't have any other questions posted right now, but I want to go back to something you said earlier in the presentation, which was when you were sitting at your desk before the virtual environment, you had the opportunity to listen in and see how your team was doing just by being present. How has that changed, and how have you compensated for that missing in your environment of checking in to make sure your team was doing okay? And what have you done now?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So it did change. It changed substantially, and there was a real loss, a feeling of loss, not just from me, but my team, that we were so tight and working so collaboratively, and now we're all in our basements or living rooms or kitchen tables, and so it was this sense of loss of being apart. In the early days, I had the thought that and let me clarify one thing too. As the manager, this was not about me checking up on them to see if they were working. This was me checking to see the health of our relationships, because I've found my own experience is that if I spend my time making sure they're healthy, they just do the work. They signed on to do the work. They love the work. They just don't want to be held back. So to answer your question, in the early days, and I thought this was going to be very temporary, I created not one but 3 coffee breaks a week, which was no work content and cameras on. And that was Monday morning, Wednesday morning, Friday morning. We're 300 days in, I'm on assignment, and they have carried on with 3 coffee breaks a week. They're not long, but they are intended to be health checks with no other agenda.
No, thanks for that, Bob. I can honestly say that I have worked beside your team when we were in Swing Space a few years ago, and it's interesting that you gave that example because one of your team members recently reached out to me to see how I was doing. So that shows how maybe one team and their dynamics is feeling healthy and you know, have all those fundamentals that your team has built, and then they do reach out outside of their own teams to create those environments as well.
Oh, so, wow! I'm so proud of them.
Yeah,
that's awesome to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, we have about another 2 minutes before we have to wrap up. I don't see any other questions, but the one thing I wanted to ask was when we were doing the word cloud and we were talking about who do we need for, you know, being the leader, and we gave examples of who, you know, what we needed. How do we foster that to get that information from our team in the virtual environment?
Yeah, I can't stress enough the idea of once you have built some trust, to have team meetings and have awkward conversations as the topic. So we have annual meetings where we talk about the training budget, and in that meeting, we talk about people's aspirations, and we talk about it as a team. What's your aspirations? What's your aspirations? And it without the trust, it's an uncomfortable conversation. But once you have the trust, it's very telling, and people become very supportive of one another's aspirations. In the same way, it's about having those potentially awkward conversations about coming in front of your team and saying, "Hey, listen, guys. What do you need from me? How could I improve this team by investing in you guys, and in what way? You know, how's the morale, and what can I be doing differently to help with that or improve that? You know, maybe it's already good. We want it to be even better. You know, so it's very much about getting real with your team. That vulnerability word that's parked in the trust slide, that includes the team lead. You know, in fact, the concept of vulnerability that we teach is all about extending vulnerability into the team in order to show people that they can also be vulnerable. So get up in front of your team and say, "Hey, guys, I don't know what I should be doing for you right now. What do you think?"
Yeah, thanks for that, Bob. I've certainly taken that advice from you as well. And I've asked my team point blank as a team and individually, because not everybody likes to be maybe raising their hand in the group to say what their needs are. So definitely, I think those examples that you've shown us today will be very helpful in moving forward in creating those virtual team environments that foster those fundamentals and become successful. So
Yeah,
we're down.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say we're down to about our last minute before people are going to maybe be signing off for the day. So if you wanted to conclude one thing, and then I was just going to turn it over to Daryl to close things off for us.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate this one thing. You've got this. As a manager, you've got this. Reach out, but it's all comes from within. Be the authentic you. Your team will respond. And thank you all so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Bob. Daryl, now over to you for closing remarks.
Thanks, Christine. And I just want to thank all the participants for joining today and investing in yourself. It takes time to invest in yourself. And as managers, we always seem to find that we're short of time. A special thanks to Bob Ferguson and Transport Canada IT team, who without them, this session definitely would not have been possible. And they're the ones that made sure that this session went off without a hitch. And so a big thank you to them on behalf of all of us at the National Managers community. The information and tools we share today will definitely be helpful to all public servants, and we try to keep our teams engaged through these challenging times. And I challenge you to implement some of the ideas that you've learned today. We hope you will all join us for the next national learning event on February 23rd, when the National Managers community will host a panel discussion on diversity and inclusion. So watch for notification through your email and Twitter and other forms of communication when you can register. You can follow us at Twitter at NMC_CNG for all updates and registration details. The NMC GC Connects page, or consult with GC Campus to sign up. Until then, we thank you for attending. Best wishes and have a great day. And this does conclude the event. Thank you.